Princess stood by her bedroom window, watching the twin moons rise over the crystal spires of her home world. The pale blue light made her skin shimmer like starlight, but tonight she felt no joy in her natural beauty. Her father had called for her, and she knew what that meant. Another boring meeting about trade agreements or diplomatic nonsense. She walked slowly through the palace halls, her bare feet silent on the smooth stone floors. The walls glowed softly with bioluminescent patterns that responded to her mood, currently pulsing with nervous energy. Other members of her species, the ethereals, bowed respectfully as she passed. Their own skin glowed in greeting, a sign of respect for the royal family. The throne room doors opened before her, massive panels that seemed to be carved from a single piece of moonstone. Her father, Emperor, sat on his throne made of living crystal that grew from the planet's core. His expression was serious, more serious than usual. "Daughter," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Ethereals lived much longer than most species in the galaxy. Please sit. We must discuss your future." Took her place on the smaller throne beside him, trying not to show her irritation. "What diplomatic marriage have you arranged this time, father? The prince, the crystalline heir?" "Neither," said quietly. "This is different. This is necessary for the survival of our people." Something in his tone made his blood run cold. Her skin flickered between blue and silver, a sign of growing fear among her kind. "You will marry Commander of the Terran Federation," her father announced. The words hit like a physical blow. She gripped the arms of her throne so hard the crystal cracked slightly. "A human? Father, you cannot be serious. They are monsters." Emperor raised his hand for silence. "I understand your shock, but this alliance is crucial. The humans control 3 of the most important trade routes in this sector of the galaxy. Without their cooperation, our economy will collapse within 50 years. Stood up so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. "But they are barbarians. They wage war with primitive weapons. They kill without mercy. The entire galaxy knows what they did at. They slaughtered thousands." "The reports may be exaggerated," her father said, though he did not sound entirely convinced. "What matters is their military strength. No species has ever defeated them in battle. With this marriage, we secure their protection and their trade agreements." Began packing, her skin now flashing angry red patterns. "You want me to marry one of the butchers of father? They do not even use proper energy weapons. They still use metal projectiles like some primitive species from the Dark Ages. And their ships," she shuddered. "Black, ugly things that look like instruments of death." "Their methods may seem crude, but they are effective," replied. "Commander is said to be one of their finest officers. He has never lost a battle. Because he shows no mercy to his enemies." His voice rose higher than was proper in the throne room. "Humans do not understand honor in combat. They fight until everything is destroyed. They form emotional attachments to their war machines. It is unnatural." The Emperor's skin glowed brighter, a sign he was losing patience. "Enough. The decision is made. The human delegation arrives in 3 days. You will meet your future husband and begin the courtship period as required by both our customs and theirs." Felt tears forming in her large silver eyes. "Father, please, anyone else. I would rather marry a slug farmer than one of those death dealers." "They do not have a fleet of warships," said firmly. "The humans do, and more importantly, they honor their agreements. Once this marriage bond is sealed, they will protect our people as fiercely as they protect their own." "That is exactly what I'm afraid of," whispered. She had heard the stories from survivors of human conflicts, how human soldiers would fight even when badly wounded, how they refused to surrender even when facing certain death, how they would sacrifice themselves to save their comrades without hesitation. The galaxy called it courage, but thought it sounded more like madness. Her father stood and walked to her, placing his hands on her shoulders. His touch was warm and comforting, as it had been when she was a child. "I know this is difficult, daughter, but sometimes we must do things we do not want to do for the greater good. Your marriage will save millions of ethereal lives." "What kind of life will I have with such a creature?" asked. "Humans are cold, mechanical beings. They think only of war and conquest. I have heard they do not even create art or music." "You know this is not entirely true," her father said gently. "Human music has become quite popular in some parts of the galaxy, and their literature is unique." Pulled away from him. Violent stories about conflict and struggle, not like our poetry about the beauty of light and crystal growth. Emperor sighed. "Perhaps you will be surprised. The commander has requested materials about our culture to study before his arrival. That shows respect, does it not? Or it shows he is planning the best way to conquer us from within," muttered. "Give him a chance, daughter, for me, for our people." Nodded reluctantly, but inside her heart was filled with dread. In 3 days, she would meet the monster she was supposed to marry. A human warrior who had killed countless beings across the galaxy. A member of the species that solved every problem with violence. She looked out the great windows at the peaceful city below, where her people lived in harmony with their crystal gardens and singing fountains. Soon, this would all change. Soon, the humans would come with their dark ships and their terrible weapons. As she left the throne room, wondered if her father was making the biggest mistake in ethereal history. But she was a princess, and she had duties to her people, even if those duties included marrying a monster. The next 3 days would pass too quickly, she knew, and then her nightmare would begin. The human ships arrived exactly when they said they would. Watch from her tower window as the dark vessels descended through the atmosphere like falling shadows. They were nothing like the flowing, organic ships of her people that seemed to dance through space. These human craft were all angles and hard lines, built for one purpose only. "War." "Princess," her attendant Lyra whispered from the doorway. "Your father requests your presence in the main hall. The humans have arrived." Closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had not slept well for 3 nights, imagining what kind of monster she would soon meet. In her nightmares, he was a giant covered in scars, with cold eyes and hands stained with the blood of his enemies. "Help me dress," she said quietly. Lyra helped her into the formal robes of state, made from fabric that captured and reflected light like trapped moonbeams. The traditional jewelry felt heavier than usual as Lyra placed each piece carefully. The crown of her station seemed to weigh as much as a mountain. As they walked to the main hall, other palace servants whispered to each other in the corners. Everyone was nervous about the humans. Some had heard they ate the flesh of their enemies. Others said they could not feel emotions like normal beings. The rumors grew worse with each telling. "Did you see their leader?" one servant whispered to another as passed. "Smaller than I expected," came the reply, "but you can see the killer instinct in his eyes." Stomach twisted with fear. Even the servants were afraid, and they had only seen him from a distance. The doors to the main hall opened before her with their usual silent grace. Inside, the human delegation stood in a neat line, dressed in dark blue uniforms that matched their ships. They looked disciplined and dangerous, like weapons that had learned to walk upright. But as looked at their leader, she felt confused instead of terrified. Commander was not the monster she had imagined. He was of average height for a human, perhaps a bit taller than herself. His hair was dark brown with touches of gray at the temples. His skin was unmarked by battle scars. Most surprising of all, he was reading something on a small device while they waited. When the herald announced her arrival, looked up and immediately put away his device. He stepped forward and gave her a bow that was clearly in the ethereal style, though slightly imperfect. Then he spoke. "Princess," he said in her own language, his pronunciation careful but recognizable. "It is an honor to meet you. I hope the greeting I learned is correct." stared at him. His voice was deeper than ethereal voices, but not harsh as she had expected, and he had learned their language. Why would a conquering barbarian bother with such things? Your pronunciation is adequate, she managed to say. Smiled, and the expression transformed his entire face. I am glad. I have been studying your language for months, but I was worried about making mistakes. I would not want to accidentally insult you. Behind him, one of his officers whispered something in the human language, nodded and gestured to a member of his team, who stepped forward carrying a container. I hope you will accept this gift, said, switching back to ethereal. I wanted to bring you something meaningful for our first meeting. The container opened to reveal the most beautiful flower had ever seen. It had the delicate, crystal-like petals of a moon blossom from her home world, but the deep red color and rich fragrance of something alien. The two types of flowers should not be able to exist together. It was botanically impossible. Hal whispered, reaching out to touch one perfect petal. I spent considerable time learning about ethereal plant life, explained, and earth botany as well. This hybrid should not exist, you are right. But sometimes when you combine two different things carefully, you can create something more beautiful than either one alone. Looked up at him sharply. Was he talking about flowers or about their upcoming marriage? His expression gave nothing away, but there was something gentle in his dark eyes. I have never seen anything like this, she admitted. Nor have I, replied. Each one is unique, like people, I suppose. Emperor stepped forward, clearly pleased that the introduction was going well. Commander, welcome to our world. I trust your journey was comfortable. Very much so, Your Majesty, replied, switching to perfect diplomatic language. Your planet is even more beautiful than the reports suggested. My crew was particularly impressed by the crystal formations in your lower atmosphere. As the formal greetings continued, found herself studying the human commander instead of listening to the words. He did not move like a warrior. His gestures were controlled but not aggressive. He listened carefully when others spoke and asked thoughtful questions about ethereal culture. When her father mentioned their poetry traditions, his face lit up with genuine interest. I have read some translations of ethereal verse, he said. The way your poets describe the interaction between light and crystal is fascinating. We have nothing quite like it in human literature. You read poetry? Asked before she could stop herself. Turned to her with another of those surprising smiles. When I have time, I find it helps me understand different ways of thinking. Your poets see beauty in patterns of light that humans would never notice. But you are a military commander, said, confused. Do you not spend your time studying tactics and weapons? Some of my time, yes, agreed. But a good commander needs to understand more than just fighting. How can I protect something if I do not understand what makes it worth protecting? The formal reception continued for another hour, but barely heard the political discussions between her father and the human delegation. Her mind was spinning with contradictions. This man did not match anything she had been told about humans. He was polite without being false. He seemed genuinely interested in learning about her people. He had taken the time to study their language and customs, and the flower he had given her was not a display of wealth or power, but something created with patience and care. When the reception ended, approached her one more time. Princess, I hope we will have a chance to speak more during my visit, he said. I would very much like to learn about your personal interests, if you are willing to share them. Yes, said, still confused by everything she had seen. I would like that as well. As the human delegation was escorted to their guest quarters, remained in the hall holding the impossible flower, Lyra approached her cautiously. Princess, are you well? You look troubled. I am troubled, admitted, but not in the way I expected to be. She had come to this meeting prepared to hate the monster her father wanted her to marry. Instead, she had met someone who created beautiful flowers and read poetry. someone who smiled when he spoke and listened when others talked. Either Commander was the most skilled deceiver in the galaxy, or everything she thought she knew about humans was wrong. Both possibilities frightened her equally. The next morning found herself walking through the palace gardens earlier than usual. She had spent the night thinking about her meeting with Commander, and sleep had been impossible. The strange flower sat in a place of honor in her room, its impossible beauty challenging everything she thought she knew. She was surprised to find already in the gardens, sitting on a bench near the singing fountains. He was reading again, but this time from an actual book made of real paper, not a digital device. "Commander," she said softly, not wanting to startle him. He looked up and smiled, that same gentle smile from yesterday. "Princess, good morning. I hope you do not mind me being here. Your gardens are extraordinary." "You are welcome anywhere in the palace," she said formally, then added more quietly, "What are you reading?" Held up the book so she could see the cover. It was written in ethereal script. "A collection of your planet's classical poetry. I am afraid my reading is much slower than my speaking, but I wanted to understand the original words, not just translations." Sat down on the opposite end of the bench, maintaining proper distance. "That is a very old collection. Where did you find it?" "I brought it with me," said. "I have been collecting books about your culture for months. Your poetry, your history, your philosophy. I wanted to understand the people I hope to protect." "Protect?" asked. "I thought this marriage was about trade agreements." Closed the book carefully and turned to face her. "That is part of it, yes. But from my perspective, I am being given the honor of protecting an entire species and their beautiful civilization. That is not a responsibility I take lightly." "But humans are conquerors," said, voicing the confusion that had kept her awake. "You take what you want by force. The whole galaxy knows this." Was quiet for a long moment, watching the crystal fountain spray patterns of light into the morning air. "May I ask you something, Princess? What exactly do you know about human conflicts? Not rumors or stories, but actual facts." "Thought about it. I know you have never lost a war. I know you refuse to surrender even when facing impossible odds. I know what happened at 442. "Ah, 442, said sadly. "What do you know about that battle?" "You slaughtered thousands of colonists," said, though something in his expression made her doubt her words. "The whole galaxy calls your soldiers the butchers because of what they did there." Stood up and walked to the fountain, his hands clasped behind his back. "Princess, would you like to know what really happened at?" "Tell me," said, though she was not sure she wanted to hear. "It was not a battle at first," began. "It was a human colony world, home to about 50,000 civilians. Farmers, teachers, artists, children. The military attacked without warning or declaration of war." Felt her skin flicker with surprise, but the reports said. "The reports were written by said quietly. They attacked our colony to claim the mineral rights in that system. When we arrived with a rescue fleet, they had already begun executing civilians to force our surrender." "That cannot be true," whispered. Pulled out his personal device and showed her a recording. "This is from our ship's sensors during the battle. I warn you, it is difficult to watch." The recording showed human ships arriving at a planet under siege. The surface was already burning in several places. Then came audio transmissions from the surface, desperate voices calling for help, speaking about family members who had been killed. "Our soldiers did not slaughter," said as the recording continued. "They died trying to save human civilians who were trapped on the surface. 237 human soldiers died buying time for evacuation ships to escape with survivors." The recording showed human fighters throwing themselves at vastly superior forces, not to win, but to delay. Ship after ship was destroyed, but each sacrifice bought a few more minutes for civilian transports to reach safety. "The butchers said with deep sadness in his voice, were the human soldiers who butchered themselves trying to save others. The name is correct, but the story is backwards. Watched the recording with growing horror, not at human cruelty, but at human sacrifice. She saw soldiers ramming their damaged ships into enemy vessels to stop them from pursuing fleeing civilians. She heard final transmissions from dying pilots, not speaking of glory or victory, but sending love to their families. "Why does the galaxy believe the other story?" she asked. "Because they control several major news networks," replied. "And because it is easier for other species to believe humans are monsters than to admit they stood by and did nothing while innocents died." Sat back down beside her, closer this time. "This is why humans fight the way we do, Princess. We have learned that mercy is often seen as weakness by our enemies. We use kinetic weapons because energy weapons can be turned against civilian populations too easily. We refuse to surrender because surrender often means the death of those we are trying to protect." "But your reputation across the galaxy," began. "Our reputation keeps our enemies afraid and our allies safe," said. "If other species believe we are unstoppable killing machines, they are less likely to attack human worlds or the worlds of our friends. Sometimes a terrible reputation is a more effective weapon than any ship." Was quiet for a long time, processing this new information. Everything she thought she knew was crumbling like old crystal in sunlight. "What about the emotional attachments to your war machines?" she asked. "The galaxy says it is unnatural." Smiled sadly. "Our ships and weapons keep our families safe. Of course we form attachments to them. When a pilot's fighter has brought him home safely through 20 battles, when a ship has protected a colony from raiders, how can we not respect those machines? They are not just tools, they are partners in protecting what we love." And the refusal to use proper surrender protocols. "We have learned that our enemies rarely honor those protocols," said. "Too many human soldiers have died under flags of truce. Too many surrendering enemies have revealed hidden weapons. So now we prefer to fight until the threat is completely ended, rather than risk the lives of innocents." Stood up and walked to where a crystal flower was growing from the garden wall. Its beauty seemed different now, more fragile, something that needed protection from harsh realities. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "You could have let me continue believing the stories. It might have been easier." Stood as well, moving to stand beside her but not too close. "Because I do not want our marriage to be built on lies, even comfortable ones. If we are to spend our lives together, I want you to know who I really am. Not the monster the galaxy fears, but a man who has dedicated his life to protecting others." "Even protecting me?" asked quietly. "Especially protecting you," replied. "And through you, protecting your entire people. That is not a burden to me, Princess. It is an honor I hope to prove worthy of." Looked at him, this man who was nothing like what she had expected. "Show me more," she said suddenly. "More of what?" "More of who humans really are. I want to see your ships, meet your people, understand your culture. If I am to be your wife, I need to know the truth about everything." Smiled, and this time it reached his eyes completely. "I would be happy to show you, Princess. Though I warn you, the truth about humans might be even more surprising than the lies." As they walked back toward the palace together, realized that her wedding was no longer the nightmare she had imagined. Instead, it was becoming something she had never expected. A chance to learn about a species that might be even more complex and honorable than her own. 3 days later, stood in the command center of his flagship, the ship he had named Guardian's Promise. Unlike the dark, threatening vessel she had expected, the interior was filled with warm lighting and displayed artwork from dozens of different worlds. The crew moved with quiet efficiency, and she noticed that knew every person by name. "Lieutenant, how is your daughter's recovery going?" asked a young officer as they passed. "Much better, sir. Thank you for asking. The doctors on Earth say she will make a full recovery." "That is excellent news, Please give her my regards." Watched this exchange with interest. She had never seen a commander who cared about his soldiers' families. In her experience, military leaders focused only on duty and discipline. "You know all their personal situations?" she asked quietly. "Of course," replied as they walked toward the bridge. "How can I ask someone to risk their life for me if I do not care about what makes their life worth living?" Before could respond, an urgent alarm began sounding throughout the ship. The gentle lighting shifted to a more serious blue, and crew members immediately moved to emergency stations. "Commander, to the bridge immediately," came a voice over the communication system. "We have a priority distress signal." And hurried to the bridge, where the senior staff was already assembled around a large display screen. The news was not good. "Report," said calmly. "Sir, we are receiving a distress call from the passenger liner Crystal Song," his first officer reported. The ship was carrying both human and ethereal passengers on a cultural exchange mission. They were attacked by ethereal separatists about 2 hours ago. Gasped. The separatists were a small group of her own people who opposed any alliance with humans. They had made threats, but she never thought they would actually attack civilians. "The ship is badly damaged and losing life support," the officer continued. "Estimated survivors: 67 humans, 43 ethereals, including 12 children. They are trapped in a debris field and the separatist ships are still in the area." Emperor appeared on the communication screen from his palace. "Commander, I am preparing to send our royal fleet to handle this situation. Thank you for detecting the distress signal." "With respect, Your Majesty," said politely but firmly, "my ship is closer and better equipped for search and rescue operations. We can reach them in half the time your fleet would need." "This is an internal ethereal matter," the Emperor replied. "I cannot ask you to risk human lives for our people." Looked at the screen showing the location of the damaged ship, then at, "Your Majesty, those are not just ethereal people in danger. They are passengers under the protection of both our governments. Human or ethereal, they are all people who deserve to be saved." Stepped forward. "Father, I want to go with Commander on the rescue mission." "Absolutely not," the Emperor said immediately. "It is too dangerous." "I can help," insisted. "My people will trust me more than human rescuers, and I have healing abilities that might be needed." Turned to her with concern. "Princess, your father is right. This will be dangerous. The separatists will not hesitate to fire on rescue ships." "Then you will need all the help you can get," said firmly. "These are my people too. I will not hide in safety while others risk their lives." Studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "Very well, but you follow my orders exactly during the operation. No arguments." "Agreed." Emperor looked unhappy but did not override his daughter's decision. "Be careful, both of you. The separatists have been planning this for months. They may have more surprises waiting." As the Guardian's promise moved toward the disaster site, watched coordinate the rescue operation. His calm competence was impressive, but what struck her most was how he treated every potential casualty as equally important. "I want medical teams prepared for both human and ethereal physiology," he ordered. "Engineering teams ready for atmosphere breach repairs. Combat teams on standby, but remember, our priority is saving lives, not fighting." When they reached the debris field, the sight was heartbreaking. The Crystal Song was broken into 3 major pieces, each spinning slowly in space. Small figures could be seen in the windows, survivors waiting desperately for help. "Separatist ships detected," the sensor officer reported. 3 vessels, maintaining distance but blocking escape routes. "Are they hailing us?" asked. "Yes, sir. They demand we withdraw and let them finish what they started." His expression hardened. "Signal them back. Tell them we are here for humanitarian rescue only. If they interfere with our saving lives, they will face the consequences." The rescue operation began immediately. Human and ethereal crew members worked together to reach the survivors, watched through the viewing ports as rescue pods launched toward the damaged ship, their pilots navigating carefully through dangerous debris. "Commander," the communications officer called out, "the Separatist leader wants to speak with Princess directly." The main screen activated, showing an ethereal male whose skin flickered with angry red patterns. Recognized him as General, a former member of her father's council who had been exiled for his extremist views. "Princess," said coldly, "how disappointing to see you working with the human invaders. Have you forgotten what your own people stand for?" "I have not forgotten anything," replied firmly. "I remember that ethereals value all life. What you are doing here is murder." "We are preventing contamination," spat. "Those passengers chose to associate with humans. They accepted the consequences." "Children chose nothing," said, stepping into view of the screen. "You are threatening innocent children." "Human children will grow up to be human soldiers," replied. "And ethereal children who have been corrupted by human ideas are no longer truly ethereal." His jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "You have one chance to withdraw peacefully. We are here to save lives, not start a war. But if you fire on civilian rescue operations, we will respond." Laughed harshly. "One human ship against 3 of ours. You are brave but not very smart." The communication ended, and immediately the Separatist ships began moving toward attack positions. "All rescue teams continue operations," ordered calmly. "Defense teams protect the rescue ships at all costs." What followed was the most amazing display of coordination and bravery had ever witnessed. Crew worked together like parts of a single organism, each person knowing exactly what to do. When the Separatist ships opened fire, human fighters launched to intercept, not to attack the enemy ships, but to shield the rescue operations. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "Lieutenant's fighter has been damaged. He is trapped between 2 enemy ships." Without hesitation stood up, "I am going out there." "Sir, you cannot," his first officer protested. "You are needed here." "Has a newborn daughter at home," said simply. "No one else dies today if I can prevent it." Suited up in record time and launched in his personal fighter. Watched in terror and amazement as he flew directly into the most dangerous part of the battle, not to attack the enemies, but to rescue his own pilot. She saw him take hit after hit from enemy fire as he maneuvered to reach the damaged fighter. When his own ship's weapon systems were destroyed, he used his ship itself as a shield, placing his hull between the enemy guns and the rescue operations. "Ship is badly damaged," the tactical officer reported. "He is losing life support." Through all of this, the rescue continued. Every survivor was brought aboard, human and ethereal alike. Medical teams worked frantically to save the injured, and continued to fight, not for glory or victory, but to buy time for others to live. When the last rescue pod docked, its fighter was barely functioning. As it limped back to the ship, one of the Separatist vessels made a final attack run, trying to destroy the rescue craft. Turned his dying fighter directly into the enemy's path. The collision disabled the Separatist ship, but its fighter was destroyed in the explosion. "Emergency retrieval," the first officer shouted. "Get the commander back aboard now." When they finally pulled from his damaged escape pod, he was unconscious and badly injured. As the medical team rushed him to the emergency medical bay, followed, her healing abilities already beginning to work. She placed her hands on his burns and felt something she had never experienced before. Through her natural empathic healing powers, she could sense his thoughts and emotions during the battle. He had not been thinking of victory or glory. His mind had been focused entirely on the faces of the people he was trying to save, the ethereal children who reminded him of his own niece, the human passengers who trusted him to bring them home, his own crew members who depended on his leadership. And surprisingly, throughout the entire battle, he had been thinking of her. Not of politics or alliances, but of keeping her safe so she could help save her own people. For the first time, truly understood what humans were. They were not conquerors or monsters. They were guardians who would sacrifice everything to protect those they cared about. As injuries healed under her touch, realized something that shocked her to her core. She was falling in love with him. Remained unconscious for 5 days. During that time, rarely left his bedside in the medical bay. She used her healing abilities to help repair his injuries, but more than that, she found herself talking to him while he slept, telling him things she had never told anyone. "I was wrong about your people," she whispered as the artificial day cycle dimmed around them. "I was wrong about everything. The galaxy is wrong about everything." His breathing was steady now. His burns nearly healed thanks to her abilities combined with human medical technology. But he had not yet awakened, and the doctors were beginning to worry about possible brain damage from oxygen loss during his escape from the destroyed fighter. "You have to wake up," continued, holding his hand gently. "I need to tell you something important. I need to tell you that this marriage, it is no longer just a political arrangement for me." She had been reading to him from the same book of ethereal poetry he had been studying in the garden. The verses about light and crystal seemed different now, more meaningful when shared with someone who had risked everything to save others. On the morning of the 6th day, his eyes finally opened. "Princess," he said weakly, his voice rough from the medical treatments, Are you really here, or am I dreaming?" "I am here," said, her skin glowing brightly with relief and joy. "I have been here the whole time." Tried to sit up, winced and settled back down. "The survivors from the Crystal Song, are they?" "All alive," assured him quickly. "Every single one, human and ethereal alike. The children are already back with their families. You saved them all." "We saved them all," corrected. "Your healing abilities made the difference for the worst injured, and your presence convinced the ethereal survivors to trust us during the rescue." They looked at each other in silence for a moment, and felt the same connection she had experienced while healing him. The understanding between them that went deeper than words. She said carefully, "I need you to know something. When I was healing you, I could sense your thoughts during the battle. I know why you did what you did." His face colored slightly. "My thoughts were probably not very coherent at the time." "They were beautiful," said simply. "You were not thinking about victory or glory. You were thinking about protecting others, about keeping people safe, about—" She hesitated, then continued bravely, "about keeping me safe." "Always," said without hesitation. "That will always be my first priority. Even before duty to your government." "My duty to my government is to protect human interests," replied. "But my duty to you is to protect your heart. I would rather fail at the first than succeed at the second." Felt her skin shimmer through the entire spectrum of ethereal emotions. "I need to tell you something. This marriage we have been planning." His expression became careful. "If you have changed your mind, I will understand. I know this has all been difficult for you." "I have changed my mind," said, and watched him try to hide his disappointment. "I no longer want to marry you because my father commands it." Nodded slowly. "I see. I hope we can still be friends." "I want to marry you because I love you," finished. The words hung in the air between them like the ringing of crystal bells. Stared at her with an expression of wonder that transformed his entire face. "You love me?" he asked. "I love your courage, your kindness, your dedication to protecting others," said, the words pouring out of her now that she had started. "I love that you read poetry and create impossible flowers. I love that you know the names of all your crew members and care about their families. I love that you would rather die than let innocent people suffer." Reached up to touch her face gently. "I have loved you since the first moment I saw you in that great hall. Not because you are beautiful, though you are. Not because marrying you would seal an alliance, though it will. I love you because your heart is as radiant as your skin, because you insisted on risking your life to help save people you had never met. Their wedding 3 weeks later was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Representatives from dozens of species came to witness the union between the ethereal princess and the human commander. Many came expecting a cold political ceremony, but instead they found a celebration of genuine love. Emperor walked his daughter through a garden lit by thousands of crystal formations, their light reflecting off her traditional wedding gown until she seemed to be made of starlight itself. At the altar, waited in a uniform that combined human military tradition with ethereal ceremonial elements. But the most amazing sight was the wedding guests themselves. Human and ethereal crew members from the rescue mission stood together, their friendship forged in crisis. Survivors from the Crystal Song, both species, served as honored witnesses. Even some former separatists attended, their views changed by seeing humans risk their lives to save ethereal children. When and exchanged vows, they spoke in both languages, promising not just to love each other, but to help bridge the gap between their peoples. I promise to protect your light, said, and to help it shine for others. I promise to heal your wounds, replied, and to help you carry the burden of protecting others. The ceremony concluded with a tradition from both cultures, the joining of light and metal, created a sculpture of pure crystal light while forged a framework of precious metals. When combined, they formed something entirely new, beautiful in a way that neither culture could have created alone. 6 months later, stood on the observation deck of their new flagship, a vessel designed by both human and ethereal engineers. Through the transparent walls, she could see their combined fleet, human ships with their angular efficiency and ethereal vessels with their organic grace, working together to explore unknown regions of space. Any regrets? Asked, joining her at the observation window. Even after all this time, his presence still made her skin glow with happiness. Only one, replied, leaning against his shoulder. I regret that it took a crisis for me to see who you really were. I should have looked past the rumors and fears from the beginning. The galaxy is learning, said, pointing to the mixed crews visible through the ship windows. It just takes time for people to see past their preconceptions. As they watched, a message arrived from the ethereal. A new threat had emerged in the outer systems, a species that was genuinely aggressive and expansionist. The Ethereal Council was requesting human assistance in dealing with the crisis. More work for us, observed. Smiled, thinking of all the innocent people they would protect together. I can think of no better way to spend our lives. In the distance, their fleet turned toward the unknown danger, ready to face whatever challenges awaited. Human determination and ethereal wisdom working together, proving that sometimes the galaxy's most feared species were actually its most caring. Had been right about one thing. When you combined two different things carefully, you could create something more beautiful than either one alone. Their marriage had done more than unite two individuals. It had shown the galaxy that understanding was possible between any peoples, no matter how different they seemed. And as their ships jumped into hyperspace together, knew that their love story was really just the beginning of something much larger. A new age where strength was measured not by the fear you inspired, but by how fiercely you protected those who could not protect themselves. The cruel human had turned out to be the galaxy's greatest guardian, and the alien princess had become his willing partner in protecting the light of civilization itself.